So we're supposed to talk about RevRec today. Why do you think RevRec is a topic that we're recording on this pod right now?
It's just the biggest thing that we see brands get wrong, whether they're coming from an ERP system or they were managing their books on something like QuickBooks and Zero, or they were managing their books through a third party accountant. This is one of those things that we see brands get wrong all the time.
Okay, so wrong implies there is a right. So it sounds like you have a strong opinion on what right
Oh,
means.
I don't. GAAP has. So
Okay,
GAAP
yeah.
is generally accepted accounting principles, and it clearly provides guidelines on when you recognize revenue. Now, this is an easy mistake to make in D2C because most brands operate on an e-com platform like Shopify, and as soon as you have checkout, you have money in your Shopify gateway or PayPal or whatever, and then a deposit comes to your bank account. Common mistakes is using a sales report from Shopify to recognize revenue, or this payout that just money just hit your bank account, using that to recognize revenue. It's an easy way to do it. So external bookkeeping firms, if they are responsible for your accounting, that's a faster way, spend less hours to have financials prepared. Now, it's mind you, it's also legal if you're doing cash accounting, which I think is allowed up to 10 million in revenue by IRS. So it's probably okay when you're small, but definitely not compliant at scale. So that approach is not a feasible option to be GAAP compliant. If you're working on Amazon mostly, because of the way Amazon reports work and Amazon pays you when you ship and so on, it's a marketplace. Revenue recognition is typically GAAP compliant, but not when it comes from something like Shopify. This is what brands get wrong. And even with traditional ERP systems, what we end up seeing is brands are using these payouts to recognize revenue and book an invoice and book all of the fees, everything in one go based on that payout. And that's not compliant with GAAP. So it's not my opinion, it's GAAP.
I teed you up for that. But I think my follow up on this one would be let's pretend that the brand is not going to use Fulfil. What advice would you give to the brand to, improve their RevRec, improve their financials?
My hope is that most businesses should be simple enough that they don't need an ERP system. So the way to get around this is to simplify. Simplify, ship items the same day the order comes in. GAAP compliance is now the same as you've met your obligations to recognize revenue because you shipped almost the same day or the same period within the month. So there are no pre-orders. Don't accept pre-orders because that's when you typically take cash and then you ship a long time later. Subscriptions is another thing that complicates things again because you're getting money for 3 orders that are going to ship in 3 different months, but you got it today and you have to recognize revenue across 3 months, not today. So you can simplify your business enough to avoid complexity. And if you avoid that complexity, your RevRec becomes simple and straightforward, and it's just the same as cash recognition.
Cool. Now, last question from my end on this one. I'd like you to share maybe a little bit of a story. What do you like? Can you think of a brand that you worked with that had perhaps the most complexity in their business? Explain a little bit around that complexity and the work effort that went into helping them understand how to recognize revenue and why it was so challenging.
When you have different fulfillment methods, your complexity goes up right away from revenue recognition. Think of a merchant that has that's selling, say, appliances. Now they also have a good fan base, so they have
Appliance fan base.
an appliance fan base. This is legit, by the way. We have brands that sell appliances and their customers are fanatic about it. Celebrities buy that and put that on Instagram as well. So that is possible.
So they take pictures with like these stoves.
Cooking with these appliances.
Okay.
Yeah. And they have a swag store, so where you can go and buy a t-shirt and a hat and wear that as well to support the brand. That happens. But they don't make them. So every time you get an order, that's dropshipped by somebody else. So that's one part of the products. Then, since they have this big fan base, there's a second edition of this product coming, and they want to start accepting pre-orders for those. As a customer, you just went in, you bought an item that ships right away. You saw this upsell accessory at checkout, you added that to your cart. And you know this upcoming product is coming and it just got launched, you added that to the cart. And finally you realize that, I could wear this hat, so I also add the hat to my cart. So now you have 4 line items. Of the 4 line items, Item 1 ships from warehouse in LA. Item 2 ships from this warehouse in, say, on the East Coast. Item 3 is not going to ship for 2 months. And you have item 4, which is going to be drop shipped by a vendor because you don't really make hats or t-shirts. It's not your core business, but you're just having it because you have fans. Revenue recognition for this simple order of a few $100 is now a lot more complicated because you have 4 different events that trigger this. One, when a supplier who got the PO for that shirt and hat ships it out. Another, when the warehouse on the East Coast figures out that they need to pick, pack, and ship. Another, when the West Coast one does. And finally, when that last item is received by a warehouse and that pre-order is shipped out. How do we simplify this? Fulfil thinks of each of these as operations to do. Each operation is assigned to the relevant party. When they fulfill their obligations of shipping that item, Fulfil realizes that revenue recognition has to happen for that line item and fulfills that. By the way, at any point here, any of these line items could have been canceled, replaced, or changed.
Cool. Let's go buy some Fulfil. But I think what I learned from this is that I was really thinking about who's this customer, and I was like, is there some like microwave fanboy out there that I'm not thinking, that I realized that if it was a coffee machine company, I'd probably be sporting like their hats too. So